Concept cars are a vital part of the automotive industry's lifeblood. They predict whether consumers will accept or reject a new vehicle. As consumers become more involved in the future of automotive design, the role of concept cars is becoming increasingly important. Hundreds of successful concept cars have made their way through the auto show circuit. Looking back at some of the best concept cars and why they were never produced is a great mystery. Dodge Copperhead. There was no denying that the Dodge Viper was a fantastic sports car. It was one of the first performance cars to exceed 400 horsepower, which was almost unheard of at the time. The problem was that the Viper was expensive, and it wasn't practical for everyday drivers. The Copperhead was a sports car concept designed to provide buyers with a more practical alternative to the Viper. The Copperhead concept was rear-wheel drive and powered by a V6 engine. Because of its lightweight modern design, this car was a recipe for fun. That made sense because it was essentially the same recipe Mazda used years before with the Miata. Dodge had a successful run in the 1990s, so it's puzzling why Chrysler didn't release this sports car. The Copperhead would have found a market, and enthusiasts would have snapped them up as a result. Audi Avis. Long before the Audi R8 became a stunning reality in 2006, there was the Avis concept car, which debuted in 1991. If the styling and design look familiar, it's because the Avis was the forerunner to the R8 a decade later. The all-aluminum body was the main takeaway from the concept car. The Avis was unlike anything else on the market, thanks to its mid-engine W12-powered design. The Avis never made it to market because of the 1990s recession. The Audi brand was struggling during the decade, so it's no surprise that the Avis wasn't a top priority. However, this is by far one of the most production-ready concept cars released this decade. The Acura NSX and Dodge Viper would have had no trouble competing with the Avis. Mercedes-Benz C112. Mercedes-Benz was riding high in the early 1990s, thanks to impressive victories in the Le Mans racing series. When the company unveiled this stunning concept car, there was much speculation about it going into production. When car enthusiasts saw the Mercedes-Benz C112, they saw a supercar that needed no introduction. The styling was stunning and decades ahead of its time. Even the Mercedes-Benz brand had not yet implemented this type of styling on its production vehicles. This type of styling would not be seen on a Mercedes model until the late 1990s. If the C112 had been produced, Mercedes-Benz would have had an undeniable hit that provided serious bang for the buck. Nissan IDX. The Datsun 510 is without a doubt one of the most iconic cars in automotive history. The Nissan brand was founded on the 510 car, and its popularity has lasted all these years. Nissan released a 510 rear-wheel drive concept car to much fanfare in 2013. The car was a modern take on what you'd expect a sedan to look like, and it worked well. Then Carlo Ghosn was arrested and taken to a Japanese prison, shattering the Nissan universe. Many of the cars that were supposed to hit the market were quickly cancelled and swept under the rug. Will a modern 510 ever be released? Only time will tell as Nissan slowly rebuilds its brand. Chrysler Me 412. It's amazing how many supercar concepts have been released in the last few decades, but almost none of them have gone into production. The demand for supercars is always increasing, but industry heavyweights like Lamborghini receive all of the attention. In the early 2000s, Chrysler Corporation, with its Mercedes backing, toyed with the idea. The Chrysler Me 412 is a stunning carbon fiber supercar concept that was unveiled in 2004. The styling was stunning, and the vehicle was a fully functional prototype model. The Dodge Viper had cornered a certain segment of the market, but it was a rough and tough sports car, whereas the Chrysler Me 412 was a more sedate option for higher-priced clients. Mitsubishi Concept RA. Mitsubishi has introduced numerous unique sports cars over the last 3 decades. Unfortunately, none of these sports cars were spectacular until the Mitsubishi Concept RA debuted in 2008. The concept car was heavily inspired by the current Eclipse model. However, some differences made the concept car more appealing. The concept turbo diesel R-Ace engine is the first and most noticeable feature. Not only was the car one of a kind, but it also had recyclable plastic resin body panels. The concept RA was designed to be a sustainable sports car in a market where such vehicles are uncommon. Regrettably, the recession derailed plans for this potentially interesting sports car. BMW E1. Electric crossover vehicles are only now becoming a reality, but this was not the case in the early 1990s. That is, until we saw the BMW E1, a tall-bodied electric car with a roomy interior. The E1 was a vehicle that was ahead of its time in terms of functionality and practicality. The car's range was only 155 miles, but this was still very early in electric car technology. There have been few concept cars that have been as well executed as the E1. When you consider everything the E1 brought to the table, it's fascinating to see how electric vehicles have evolved over time. Chrysler Atlantic. In the 1990s, the Chrysler Corporation went on a design binge, releasing a slew of intriguing concept vehicles. The Chrysler Atlantic sports car concept was perhaps the most notable. The retro-inspired Roadster, which was released in 1995 to acclaim, was far more finished than the Plymouth Prowler production car. The Atlantic became a real possibility thanks to smooth lines and a beautiful design. The car received positive consumer feedback, and the 2.0-liter four-cylinder engine used in the design was inexpensive to produce. Unfortunately, the Atlantic was never produced. Chrysler, on the other hand, released the Crossfire almost a decade later. If the Atlantic had been released, it could have put the Chrysler brand on the map as a well-equipped sports car. Ford GT90. Dodge had the Viper and Chevrolet had the Corvette in the 1990s, but Ford didn't have a supercar on the market. The Mustang SVT Cobra filled in for performance buyers looking for something out of the ordinary. With inspiration from the original Ford GT, the GT90 concept sought to change this. The car's design was stunning, and it was surprisingly road-ready for a concept vehicle. The concept car had a quad-turbo V12 engine that produced 720 HP, which is quite impressive even by today's standards. The car's design was contemporary while still paying homage to the original GT40. Despite the fact that the GT90 was never produced, Ford did release a GT model later in the 2000s. Lincoln Sentinel. In the 1990s, the Lincoln brand was struggling. Young luxury car buyers had shifted to other brands, such as Lexus, leaving domestic brands to sell to a very narrow demographic. Ford needed to do something to revitalize Lincoln, which it did with the Navigator SUV. But, before the Navigator, there was the Sentinel concept car, which was a modernized version of a lovely Lincoln. The car's design was inspired by the 1955 Lincoln Continental. The vehicle was visually appealing due to its clean, smooth design. The car had beautiful 20-inch wheels and was powered by a V12 engine. Although the concept car was well received by consumers, it was never produced. A few years later, Lincoln released the LS sedan, which was based on a Jaguar platform. Dodge Dakota Sidewinder. Packing a powerful engine into a small pickup truck and calling it a sports truck is not a novel concept. Ford did it with the Lightning, and GM did it with the 454 SS and Cyclone. During the 1990s, however, Dodge did not have a true performance truck. Sure, there was the Dakota Shelby, but production was limited. The Ram SS/T was more of a cosmetic package than a performance upgrade. The Sidewinder concept crammed a Viper engine into a modern-looking shell. The truck's styling was appealing, resembling a modern El Camino. Despite this, the truck concept received a lot of attention at auto shows, but the production model was never released. Later in the 2000s, Dodge would release a Viper-based truck, though it was the Ram rather than the Dakota. Nissan Stylish 6. Since the beginning of the decade, Nissan has released a slew of crossovers. There was a time when these cars were only a thought, but as the crossover segment grows, they will become more common. The Nissan Stylish 6 was a 1997 crossover concept car. The 2.5-liter engine was a gas-electric hybrid with a CVT transmission. This concept car existed long before CVT transmissions were popular. When you look back on the Stylish 6, it was a car that was ahead of its time. The Stylish 6 resembled today's modern crossover vehicles. It also introduced a new design language for the Nissan brand. The company was in a bad spot, and the cars of the 1990s were uninteresting. Nissan had to completely reinvent itself as a brand in order to stay relevant and rebuild its sales. Volkswagen W12. Have you ever seen a Volkswagen badge on a supercar? No, but there is a concept car that debuted at the Tokyo Auto Show in 1997. The Volkswagen W12 is an intriguing concept car that also happens to be a powerful supercar. Two 2.8-liter VW VR6 engines were combined to form the 5.6-liter W12 engine. The car's design was definitely out of this world, and it made for a pretty unique sports car. The beauty of this model is that it is powered by Porsche engineering. The prestige of a Porsche supercar is combined with the badge of a Volkswagen. Unfortunately, the W12 was never produced, and Volkswagen has never sold a supercar under the VW brand. If it had been built, the W12 would have been a fantastic supercar. Chrysler Kronos. You can't deny Chrysler's depth and variety in conceptual vehicle design in the 1990s. Chrysler concept cars were, to say the least, one of a kind. Many of these concept cars were drivable and appeared to be road-ready, which piqued the interest of the automotive press. The design was inspired by the production versions of the 300M and the Dodge Intrepid. The Kronos' 17-foot length was noticeable when you saw it in person, as most vehicles were not this long. The Kronos' performance was also impressive, thanks to its 6.0-liter V10 engine. Jaguar XK180. Many in the automotive press were critical of Ford's purchase of Jaguar in the 1990s. However, the collaboration resulted in some intriguing concept cars. The XK180, which debuted at the 1998 Paris Auto Show, was one such vehicle. The eye-catching sports car was a rebodied XKR that had been shortened for performance. As a result, the car handled better and looked better than its predecessor. The 4.0-liter V8 engine, which was the main V8 engine used in Jaguar models, provided power. The XK180 could have been a popular car if it had been released to the market, but that never happened. Cadillac Seal. The Cadillac Seal is similar to many Cadillac concept cars that have appeared at auto shows. The styling is reminiscent of Cadillac's reputation for large and opulent convertibles. The model, like the Eldorado and many classic Cadillacs from the 1950s, takes traditional styling and blends it into the future. There have been many beautiful Cadillac concept cars over the last few decades, but the Seal stood out. Unfortunately, the Seal was never produced because there was no market for a high-priced convertible. The Seal's long wheelbase made it appear beautiful in comparison to an otherwise bland barrage of models. Unfortunately, the recession forced GM to abandon any plans to produce the Seal. Ford Shelby GR1. Over the last 2 decades, there have been many unique Shelby models. The GR1 was a one-of-a-kind sports car concept that was both roadworthy and visually appealing. The GR1 was stunningly beautiful, with a design that combines a modern Mustang and a Ford GT. The GR1 was released in 2004 for a specific purpose, and the only model ever built was auctioned off for $82,500. Although the Mustang sports car dominates the Ford lineup, there is still room for a more powerful model. The GR1 could be marketed as a specialty model, similar to how GM markets the Corvette. The GR1 was a beautiful concept car with signature styling and the Shelby nameplate that could have offered serious bang for the buck. Lamborghini Estoque. The Estoque was marketed as Lamborghini's first practical model. The concept car, which has a wagon-like design similar to the Porsche Panamera, drew a lot of attention at the auto show. Although the Urus SUV arrived almost a decade later, the Estoque was still a fantastic vehicle. It was as close to a production car as a concept car can get. The V10 engine was powerful, but the car appeared modest. If you've ever wanted to drive a 4-door Lamborghini, this is it. The car was perfect in every way, but it was never produced. Saleen S5S Raptor. Saleen is a company that does more than just rev up your neighborhood Mustang. The company has also been known to create supercars on occasion. One such example was the S5S Raptor concept car. This exquisitely sculpted sports car was scheduled for production, but the company's financial difficulties at the time prevented it. Yes, the S5S is as close to a production car as a concept vehicle car can get. The Raptor's styling was stunning, almost reminiscent of a Ferrari. Saleen has been in the performance business for a long time, so there's no doubt that this car can compete on the track. In recent years, there has been speculation that Saleen will attempt to manufacture the S5S at some point. Bugatti Galabier. 2009 was an interesting year for concept cars, with the Galabier concept car being one of the most intriguing. What was supposed to be the Veyron's successor ended up confusing a lot of Bugatti fans. The styling was reminiscent of the Porsche Panamera more than anything else. Those who have always wanted to drive a Bugatti Chiron finally got to see one in person. There was no denying that the styling of this car was stunning, as was the functionality. It shared the W16 engine with the Veyron, and the car's design appeared to be carefully sculpted. Maybach Accelero. Maybach was a company known for opulence and excellence in the mid-2000s. The Accelero had a beautifully sculpted style that drew you in. Because Maybach hadn't yet produced a 2-door coupe, there was a lot of fanfare surrounding this model. The Accelero had a twin-turbo V12 engine and could put up some serious numbers on the track. The Accelero was supposed to go into production, but that never happened. Instead, the only model built was sold to none other than Jay-Z. It will be interesting to see if Mercedes-Benz ever brings a Maybach coupe back to life. At the time, the car had a beautiful design and a lot of potential. Mercedes-Benz Ener-G-Force. When you think of an extreme off-road vehicle, Mercedes-Benz isn't the first company that comes to mind. However, this is precisely what happened with the Ener-G-Force concept. Despite the fact that the vehicle was powered by fuel cells and had a range of 500 miles, it appeared to be capable of taking on any challenge. SUV models have become more of a status symbol in recent years, so the concept car comes as no surprise. It will be interesting to see where these Mercedes SUV models go in the future. The Ener-G-Force was intriguing, and it demonstrated what fuel cell vehicles could offer. The Ener-G-Force concept was never realized, but there was clearly a lot of potential there.